Will Microsoft's latest Surface tablet pass go?
And what can Aussies expect from Telstra's LTE-B streaming broadcasts?
Vertical Hold, Behind the Tech News, is proudly brought to you by Belkin. Welcome to Vertical Hold, Behind the Tech News, where we talk to Australia's leading technology journalists to get the stories behind the news of the week. I'm Adam Turner, and this week I'm not joined as usual by Alex Kidman to channel surf through the headlines in search of the big picture. Alex is taking a week off, so we've smashed the glass to grab our emergency Kidman. Angus Kidman, editor-in-chief of finder.com.au, welcome back to the show.
Pleasure to be here, and I've vacuumed up all the glass.
Thank you, much appreciated from a health and safety perspective. This week we're also joined by Vertical Hold regular and picker.com.au editor Lee Stark. Lee, welcome back to the show.
With glass in my foot, I'm glad to be here.
This week we're looking at Microsoft's new pint-sized Surface tablet, along with Telstra's latest attempt to cut down on streaming congestion. But first, over to the news desk. Angus, what's happening in tech?
Instagram is bringing its equivalent of Twitter's blue tick to Australia, verifying high-profile accounts so Instagram users know they're genuine. Australian users can request verification via Instagram's iOS app, with the Android equivalent coming within weeks. However, Instagram is yet to spell out the exact means you need to become verified. It is said, though, that it will only verify accounts for notable public figures, celebrities, global brands and entities, so it sounds like many users are destined to miss out.
Fans of Aussie Facebook page F-Bomb, Let's Have a Beer, are rejoicing this week after Facebook lifted its ban on the page of 2.6 million followers. Facebook removed the page without warning recently after noticing a string of pornographic posts spread across several months, although none of the page administrators received any warnings that they should receive before a Facebook page is deleted. It would appear that the page was the victim of sabotage, with the attacker hacking admin accounts and posting offensive content in an effort to see the page taken down. Facebook's hair-trigger banning and reinstatement of one of Australia's most popular humorous Facebook pages comes at a time when social media platforms are under pressure to clean up their acts. While Facebook is trying to win back our trust, Twitter has also wiped out millions of accounts as it attempts to crack down on bots and trolls.
NBN Co has introduced NNI Link, a new service that allows internet service providers to directly purchase CVC from NBN without requiring them to have a connection to every single NBN point of interconnect. So what that alphabet soup of acronyms means is that there should be fewer congestion problems and that customers in rural areas might get a wider choice of providers than just the big three. However, we're going to have to wait some months to see if providers actually take up the option and if performance really improves.
It's looking like an expensive year for Apple fans, with Cupertino rumoured to be refreshing pretty much all of Apple's computing lineup. Along with the MacBook, MacBook Pro and iMac, even the long-forgotten Mac Mini seems destined for an upgrade, perhaps finally getting the sweet solid-state drive which comes standard with the iMac. Meanwhile, the MacBook Air might be finally retired in favour of a new MacBook. So guys, I wrote a piece this week for the Sydney Morning Herald about a very popular Facebook page called F-Bomb. Let's have a beer. And it's the kind of page you think, well, of course Facebook's going to get rid of that. It's got the F-Bomb in the title, but there are plenty of pages like that. Turns out that it looks like they've been hacked, but what's even worse is Facebook was such a pain for getting the page back. Do you think that this is part of Facebook's image problem? Not just that people don't trust them, but all these Facebook page operators get treated like idiots when they have problems with their page. Facebook just doesn't want to be responsible to anybody. Gus, what do you reckon? Do they need to lift their game?
I think they do. I think it's symptomatic of a bigger problem that Facebook always have. They want to automate everything. They're hoping that everything can be done in that way. And there are very few humans involved, and they can really make bad mistakes. In the past, we've also had the thing where they banned people quoting from the US Declaration of Independence because they thought it was racist. They're not good at seeing things in context, but at the scale they're running at, they don't feel inclined to employ people to actually review and identify these issues. But I think that's the solution they have to start looking towards. They've got the tech doesn't work well enough, and they just don't have enough warm bodies on the ground to deal with anything that's a remotely complex case, as this one is.
And that's what this woman was complaining about. She said, I've invested 6 years of my life in this page. It's a money-making stream for me through the merchandise. I've got millions of followers. I'm helping build Facebook, yet I can't even get a person to talk to me when there's a problem. And they just took down her page, no explanation. And already other Facebook page owners of similar profiles, millions of followers, are coming to me and saying, I've got the same problem, but no one will talk to me. Lee, do you think that Facebook can turn this around? And is it a question of having almost like different grades of customer service depending on the level of followers you have?
Yeah, probably. I mean, part of the argument Facebook's been saying for a while is, if they did charge for it, what would that charge actually look like? Would there be a greater line of support for people who actually paid for it? But the thing, I've never heard of that Facebook page. I really should pay attention to Facebook more often and beer more often. But I was always, when you mentioned that, I was like, okay, it has the F-bomb in the title, but so did IFL Science for a long time. And
exactly.
I find it really bizarre that anyone would even, Facebook would consider taking down a page like that, especially when there are so many flat earther pages that are perfectly ripe for being taken down.
Well, in the end, what it looks like happened is someone compromised at least one of the administrator accounts, was posting porn, like serious porn, apart from, like, the stuff on this page is a bit crude anyway, but this was the next level, sort of. Posting stuff like that, reporting it to Facebook as offensive, and then hiding it so none of the other admins or anyone would see it. And they've been quietly doing this over a couple of months, waiting to the point where Facebook will go, right, we're banning the page. So the name of the page has got nothing to do with it, but the owners of the page didn't even know that. They had no idea why their page had been removed. And I think what you were saying about levels of support, perhaps charging people, but how much money is Facebook making selling ads alongside this page's post with millions of followers? Because I don't think Facebook has any kind of revenue sharing model the way that I know YouTube and others do. So if Facebook's raking in the money from these pages, I don't think it would kill them to offer a higher level of support without putting out their hand and asking.
Absolutely, and it's extraordinary. Every online business that I know of has that level of escalation. If you're a big successful participant in any brand, you will get more support. This is true of eBay. This is true of Amazon and its partner program. So it's really amazing that Facebook feels it can't follow that model.
By the same token, I mean, it's a social network, and it's arguably one of the world's biggest social networks. You can actually see. I don't want to see their point of view, but if they want to completely control that advertising stream and still charge for it, people will still pay for it because it'll give a little bit of control back to them.
I think the problem here is that Facebook's not treating everybody equally, because I would bet money that if this happened to, the Coca-Cola page or the AFL page or whatever, and porn posts were appearing, they wouldn't just pull it down without talking to anybody. Facebook would get on the phone and ring them and say, hey, can we sort this out? And I think that there needs to come a point where if an individual or a group of people have accumulated millions of followers, they perhaps deserve to be treated with the same level of respect as a corporation. But I think in Facebook's mind, it's like, oh, you're a nobody, so we don't have to answer to you. Facebook doesn't seem to follow its own rules. Facebook makes it up as it goes along. And this is what is so frustrating for people who use Facebook for a business or that developed a page, is they can't even rely on Facebook to follow their own rules. Like, the administrators of this page were telling me that sometimes their accounts would get banned for 30 days because of their profile picture, which just seemed to be an ordinary, boring picture. But then, of course, they couldn't post to their page anymore. And it's just like, why don't you just come up with a set of rules and follow them? And the more you dig into this, the more there's a big community of Facebook page owners out there, like this woman, who have millions of followers built up on funny memes and stuff like that. But for them, it's a serious business, and they are very unhappy with Facebook. And there's almost an argument to say that if someone came along and offered them a similar kind of deal but a little bit more control, you can see why they'd be tempted to move, except Facebook holds all the cards because
it's a brutal reminder. This is the thing, that it is Facebook's platform. Facebook can make the rules, and the rules say they can change the rules whenever they like. So being reliant on Facebook as your one thing is always going to be messy. We saw it earlier in the year when effectively loads and loads of media organisations, BuzzFeed et al., were reminded, suddenly their stuff just wasn't getting shared. And there was literally nothing they could do about it. And there is that little bit of me that goes, you've got to be careful about having all your eggs in one basket with any kind of digital business, because the floor can get pulled out under you remarkably quickly.
So, Gus, streaming is a bit of an issue in Australia, particularly when it comes to sport. Let's, not even talk about the whole Optus World Cup disaster. Telstra's got a new technology that it's bringing to Australia called LTE-B, and the B is for broadcast. What are we talking about here?
The aim of LTE broadcast is to solve the problem that when you've got a popular sporting match on, and Telstra has the digital rights for both AFL and NRL in Australia, what you'll typically have is you have an awful lot of people trying to watch the same content at the same time. Like, you might all be sitting around the pub, you've got that on your phone in the background while you're chatting with your mates. But because of the traditional internet streaming, every single one of those would be a separate stream. There's no ability to kind of send that separately. And that's really what LTE-B does. It says, oh, hey, hang on, if we identify that lots and lots of people connected to one cell tower are all trying to watch the same content, we can actually more effectively stream the same content to all their phones rather than having a bunch of individual streams going on at the same time. So the end result should be that you get a higher quality picture, and you don't get the constant pausing when eventually the buffering runs out and things just don't work. And there was a media demo of this today at Telstra's headquarters. They had like 100 Galaxy phones all streaming the same thing at the same time, and then 10 phones that were not connected to LTE-B next to them. And the contrast was pretty striking. That one set of handsets just kept going. There was no problem. And then the other ones just frequently pausing, buffering, error messages coming up. So it's sort of an interesting glimpse into how that particular kind of streaming problem, when you're using a mobile network, can potentially be solved once they get over a few kind of support hurdles.
It's a shame your brother, Captain Sportsball, isn't here, because there's actually something in this for him as well. Because even if you're not interested in the football, the fact that everybody who is now taking up a lot less bandwidth on the local cell means that you'll get whatever you want to watch will work better.
So, and here I thought you were going to say this had to do with Godzilla.
I'm sure there's a Godzilla. If anyone could find a Godzilla angle, it would be.
And they are talking about using it for like highly popular drama broadcasts and things as well. So when we get the Godzilla Game of Thrones mashup and everyone's trying to watch it the minute it becomes available, this again could potentially help with that. So it's the big blocker for it is that it does require support not only within the actual OS and on the device, although most devices are capable of doing it, but also within each individual app that's doing the streaming. So at the moment, you can only do it on a Galaxy S8 or a Galaxy S9. So, and within that AFL Live app, where Telstra is clearly going to add it to its other broadcast apps and says it's chatting to other people. Obviously, until you get to the point when iOS is supporting it, it's not really going to make as much difference as it might otherwise. But if they can get it built into current Samsung phones and iOS, it really could make a difference to all those people who are using Telstra for that sports stuff, and where people do it a lot because it is all unrated. So there's no reason not to use your phone to watch all those streaming apps.
But this wouldn't have saved Optus with the World Cup, because this is a last mile congestion issue. This is about congestion on the cell tower around you, where Optus was screwed right back at the
exactly.
source.
Like, it wouldn't have hurt potentially if Optus had this input.
Bearing
in mind too that Optus's pitch around all its TV stuff has actually been much more about home broadband than it was about going out through the mobile network anyway. So I don't think it would hurt to have this as part of the arsenal, but much bigger fish to fry in that case, or unfry.
Could it actually benefit people who are maybe at the stadium trying to tweet or from the actual event? Like, because you said this handles from the tower. Could this actually improve the bandwidth for people who actually go to the game?
Well, it should. With that said, I think it was the thing Adam was alluding to earlier, that it allows you, because it's using the existing bandwidth more efficiently for those people, there should be more of everything else that's left. And we know that at the major stadiums, there's been investment in trying to make that signal better. Some of that involves hooking into Wi-Fi sometimes.
They said one of the first places they were using this was at sports stadiums.
So I do think, if
you're sitting there at the football, watching the football on your phone, you're doing it wrong. I'm sorry.
Apparently lots of people do. Yeah, they showed some sort of heat maps, and like it definitely kind of happens. There's this boost of people will be at the game and they'll still end up watching the game. Maybe they're the ones who weren't in such good seats. I don't know.
Or they're in the line for a beer and it takes 20 minutes.
I'd probably be at the game watching a different show, so like some Netflix. Will it work for me there? I'm a bad sports guy.
This kind of technology's been around for a while, and we've seen it on fixed line broadband as well. And I think the name for it is unicast and multicast. So if you're sending an individual stream to everybody, that's unicast. if you're sending one stream that everybody's sharing, that's multicast, and so it reduces the load on the network. And we've seen that in Australia going back, like it's built into the D-slams of the DSL network, and I think Fetch TV was one of the early ones to use it, so they could do their pay TV over the internet and not have to worry so much about saturating the bandwidth in the neighborhood because everybody was watching. It was relying on that single stream. So it's not new technology, but I think it might be perhaps the first time in Australia we've seen it on a mobile scale rather than a fixed line scale.
And it is, we're seeing we are seeing the shift to that. Obviously, it's important to have that in your fixed line broadband, but yeah, there is a shift towards people, and it amazes me because I've spent so many years worrying about the data allowances on my phone. Lots of people don't seem to do this, and the number of commuters I see just streaming away inefficient video from like network TV sites, I'm like, oh, you're in for...
Kids today, they don't remember what it was like when your allowance was in megabytes. I was looking at my reviews the other day of the first iPhone, the iPhone 3, well, the first Australian iPhone, and the Telstra plans started at 5 meg a month. 5 meg of data a month for an iPhone. That's what we used to have to deal with.
The price hasn't changed much on Telstra.
You've got it easy today. So how does this tie in with 5G? Will 5G get rid of the need for this, or will 5G also use this? Did they talk about 5G?
5G broadly wants to solve the same problem. Like the notion of having lots of devices and giving them equivalent speed is, as we know, is one of the big goals of 5G. This, in some way, I would expect you continue to roll this out in 5G as part of that. But what 5G needs to get better at is solving the situation where you're not all trying to watch a football match, which is something that will happen a period of time, but the rest of the time, everyone is still kind of existing in unicast mode. So 5G is just supposed to get much more efficient at allocating that. So it wasn't brought up a lot in their discussion, but it's clear that this is an ongoing goal for comms networks. Now, like, it wouldn't hurt them to get faster, but when they're running at full speed, they're fast enough for what we want to do now. We just want them to be fast all the time rather than being fast intermittently and maybe not so much when we're at a stadium or if we're hanging around in the middle of the city.
One of the other interesting things I saw that Telstra's using a different video codec, the HEVC H265, which is a bit of an alphabet soup, but it's basically a more effective codec. I'm pretty sure Fetch TV uses HEVC as part of its streaming, and it's one of the reasons why you tend to get a better picture and a more reliable streaming sometimes from Fetch than some of the other services. So it's not just the unicast technology. They're looking at other ways to optimize that streaming
HEVC is also
process.
part of what makes the 4K streams work. And so you can imagine that with newer phones, like you've got the Sony Xperia XZ Premiums and whatnot, with those 4K panels, you can actually imagine if we can get those 4K streams broadcast over something like LTE-B, that we'd actually have the ability to finally watch a stream of sports in something higher than 720p.
Because this is only 720p,
yeah,
isn't it?
720p, which is still, I think, an improvement on what they've had before, but still feels like a bit cut down for people who are fully addicted to HD. I'm not one of these people. I don't mind if things look like VHS tapes, but I'm clearly in a minority.
So Microsoft's Surface range of tablets and notebooks have been around for a few years, and they've done surprisingly well. They've been pretty popular. Now, Lee, they're going with a little one. They're going with the Surface Go. Is it a goer? Say no more, Squire.
I could say a lot more on it, actually. It sounds like it's a good device. It actually sounds like it's actually meant to compete with the iPad, and that's the interesting part about this. This is not the first time Microsoft has tried a 10-inch Surface. There was the Surface 3, not the Surface 3 Pro, several years ago, and it was kind of a similar concept, actually. I know Microsoft's probably not talking about it, but the Surface Go, which is a 10-inch screen with an Intel Pentium, does anyone remember that chip technology? It's an Intel Pentium inside, so it's fanless, modern version of it. It's kind of similar to the Atom-based Surface 3 from a few years ago. It's a 10-inch design, so it means you get a slightly different type cover that'll set you back another $140, and it's compatible with the Surface Pen, which again is also optional. Basically, it's a $600 Surface with a USB Type-C charging mechanism, which is something a lot of us have really been after for a while. You could find it on the Surface Book, the last generation of it, but it still had that magnetic charging dock. USB Type-C is where a lot of us want to go with this, and so kind of I feel like this is more of a play for the iPad 9.7, basically saying, hey, you could spend $500 on an iPad 9.7, or you could get a full dedicated computer for $100 more. That's kind of what it feels like. The problem I see is that it's a $600 computer, which is a great thing. I'm all for inexpensive, good computers. I do have a problem with the operating system because it's Windows 10S.
Oh, God. Remind us again, what is the curse of the S?
The idea of Windows 10S is actually kind of solid. That's not what it stands for in this one. The idea is solid. The idea is that similar to the way how Google Chrome OS is locked down, Windows 10S is equally locked down. You can install things from the not so fantastic Windows store, and that's kind of it. You get Edge, hooray! You get Microsoft Office if you want it. There's a lot missing from the store. Last time I checked, Visual Studio was missing from the store, which makes for a really odd argument if you're trying to teach people how to program, and that's missing from the store. You can roll back from Windows 10S to Windows 10 Home on the Surface Go, which is great, but you probably lose out on that maximum 9-hour battery life. That whole reason Windows 10S is there is to guarantee a battery life limit and also to stop viruses from coming in because, again, the entire thing is locked down.
I've got to say, I think the geekerati have been guilty of going on about 10S a bit too much because for a lot of people, even when they're on a PC, what they're typically going to do, as long as they've got a browser and they've got Office, that's pretty much all they need. And there is something to be said for the lock-in, unless you do now have the option. In our first range of S devices, you were stuck. That was all you were ever going to have. So at this juncture, the option's there if you want to switch for a bit more flexibility, but for the target audience for this, I'm struggling to imagine why anyone would want to run Visual Studio on a Surface Go. But yeah, I guess in theory it could be a good thing. But yeah, I think actually that's okay, and I think as you say, it's very cleverly positioned in terms of the price point to really appeal to people to say, hey, why? Yeah, for basically the same amount of money, get something that is a lot more functional and that actually feels like a device you could really work on.
So, Gus, you're a train spotter who tries to stay productive on the go. What's in your carry bag?
It's on my list. I don't test out so much of this stuff anymore. And I thought, I wouldn't mind giving this a go. I haven't really properly lived with a Surface since the Surface 2. So things have moved on a bit and it really has become a much more respectable brand since then. So I could potentially see this, especially on kind of shorter haul trips, especially now there's been some nasty crackdowns with European airlines where my actual day-to-day work laptop is too big to qualify for their carry-on linkage, so I might need to start thinking about something like this.
What's your normal size?
So my normal size, this one's just standard 13-inch, but Ryanair have some amazingly restrictive rules about what you can take on and carry on luggage if you don't want to pay them extra money. It's kind of insane, but I won't go down that rabbit hole of raving on about cheap airlines, or we will be here all day.
There are things I like about this computer in general. Like I've always liked a 10-inch computer, and I wish more companies would do it. And the fact that it's 520 grams, that's a really important point. The keyboard won't add much to it. The type covers... I have a hit and miss relationship with the type cover. The amount of keystrokes I type in a month seems to kill them every 3 months. So hopefully they've gotten a lot better since I last killed a type cover keyboard. But yeah, you're right. Windows 10S will suit a lot of people, and that's the thing. The flexibility to go back to Windows 10 Home is what suits me. The reason I harp on about the Visual Studio thing, it's the same reason I harp on about things like Adobe Creative Cloud installations, which are also missing usually from Windows 10S and Windows Store. It's because a lot of this stuff is pitched at students, and while you're right, the Edge is a lot better than it used to be, and Office is enough of what people use. If you're a student and you're learning how to program, or you need access to the Adobe Suite, you lose that with Windows 10S. That's pretty much the only reason why I attack it. But I think it's a good idea, this computer, just simply because a great tablet for $600 is rare. Most of the tablets we're reviewing, most of the hybrid devices we're reviewing that are good, genuinely start from $1,000, and there's no real way to avoid this. This is basically a cut price Windows tablet that is trying to take on the iPad, and the iPad can do some amazing things. Hell, the iPad 9.7 is an absolutely stellar device, but it's not necessarily a dedicated computer. You can still do dedicated computer things with it, but it's not really the same experience.
Well, that just about wraps it up for another episode of Vertical Hold. Thanks to Angus and Lee for joining us on the show.
Thanks again for having me.
Thank you for having me, mate.
As always, we love to get your feedback on the show, so feel free to comment via Twitter or the Vertical Hold Facebook page. Thanks everyone for listening, and remember, if you like what you hear, hit that subscribe button. If you've already subscribed, leave us a review on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your great podcasts. Vertical Hold, Behind the Tech News, is proudly brought to you by Belkin. All right, I reckon that's a good place to stop.
Bonza.
Did you just say bonza?
All right.
I say bonza constantly. It's become my office keyword.
I've never actually heard anyone use that before. I knew it was an Aussie word, but I've just never heard anyone use it.
I may be the only person in Sydney using it actively, to be fair.